in Europe speak among each other a kind of guttural German mixed with Hebrew and written in Hebrew characters. And you've all heard of it. It's almost, it's a language that's disappearing. But it isn't, oh, Hitler really gave it a tremendous pulverizing, because all the people he annihilated, except for the ones he brought up from the Balkans, Greece, and the islands of Greece, Corfu, and places like that. And he went after those people too, as I told you. People in the camps actually saw these people come with their suitcases and didn't dare tell them where they were going. They were all nice and neat with neat little suitcases, and they were walking right to the gas chambers. And they were people from Corfu, Rhodes, people who had no part in this European struggle whatsoever. And they just rounded them up. It didn't matter, you know. They didn't really care, anything like that. No pity, total remorseless pitilessness. So there's a lot of atoning to do, but I don't think I have it to do on the Day of Atonement. There's lots of people who need to do some atoning around this earth. A lot of atoning to be done somewhere. That's never going to get done, obviously. But in any case, they all came to be called Sephardim, even though it's ridiculous to call a Jew from Yemen a Sephardi, isn't it? It's really ridiculous. But that's because Sephardi were the so-called dominant culture, coming from the refugees from Spain across North Africa and into the Ottoman Empire. Istanbul became the center. And then I told you, Saloniki in Greece was a seaport where even the stevedores were Jews, which is quite rare in the European sphere. So you have to divide it. The European sphere then are Ashkenazis, and they were expelled from France, Germany, England, places like that as the Italian bankers took over, I told you. So 11, 12, 1300s, 1400s was the last expulsion from Spain. But then, you know, they started to recoalesce slightly in the 15, 16, 17, in the period we're doing, 17, 1800s. So there's a sweep coming back, and also to America. You know, the original settlers in America, Jewish settlers, were what? They're Sephardi. Because they were escapees from Spain mostly, and Portugal. And they came to cities like New York. I think the first community was in Rhode Island because it was a free community. I think it was in Newport. There's I think it's a Judah Truro synagogue or something. If you go to Newport, Rhode Island, you'll see it. It's a very old synagogue there. And others down in the southern part of the United States, but I'm not very good at this, but history of Jews in America, but I think that the treasurer of the Confederacy was a fellow called Judah P. Benjamin, as I recall. Judah P. Benjamin, he was, what's the name of the Confederate president? What was his name? Jefferson Davis is Secretary of the Treasury.
Lee.
No, Lee was the general. Jefferson Davis was the cabinet in Richmond. His Secretary of the Treasury was Judah P. Benjamin. I think that was his name. And he was the financier of the Southern, you know, not so much of the war, but, you know, because Jews were considered to know finance. As, to some extent, they still are. You get the people, I mean, who made Clinton's economy run? It was his Treasury Secretary. What was that guy's name? Clinton's Treasury Secretary. Do you remember him just 4 or 5 years ago? He was from a big Wall Street investment company.
Greenspan?
Huh?
Greenspan?
Well, no, Greenspan's another one, but he was not Secretary of the Treasury. He's called, what's he called? The Federal Reserve Chairman. That's different. But his successor and him there are both Jews, yeah. But the other guy who was Clinton, who really made the economy hum, we've already forgotten about him, but he was very well liked, and he was Clinton's, he made Clinton do anything about finance. And he had this really sharp guy. So it does go on like that. It does go on like that. They understood high finance, and they were highly sought after. So in southern France, this was happening. I told you, The very famous French essayist, I think it's Montaigne, who came from, I think, Toulouse in southern France. He was a Morano background and so on. And he was writing in the mid-late, I think, maybe 1600, somewhere in there. He's very famous essays. So there were Sephardim in the south, and there also were Ashkenazim coming in through Alsace-Lorraine in the German border area. Alsace-Lorraine is the area, if you don't know it, between Germany and France. They're always fighting over. So, for instance, I think it's Count Mirabeau, his pretty famous name, wants the French National Assembly after the French Revolution to apply the rights of man and citizenship, along with another prelate called Abbé Gregoire, whatever they were doing, to make them free and independent persons, enfranchise them, give them the vote, and basically their philosophy was, to the Jew as an individual, everything. In other words, we won't hold back anything after the revolution in 1789. Of course, in America, it was never a question. I don't think these problems existed. Everybody was given citizenship here except the Afro-American issue. And free Afro-Americans, I think, had citizenship too. It was the problem of the ownership situation, mostly in the South, that was the issue for 100 years here. But as far as citizenship rights, you know, there was no problem with that. Anyway, their thing as a nation, as a national grouping, the Jews as a nation, as an individual, everything as a nation, nothing. I think the French are still following that rule today, actually, which is part of the meddling they're doing in the Middle East. Anything they can do to undermine the situation in the Middle East, you know, and curry favor with the Islamic world, etc., and you know, heap at least propaganda abuse on Israel. They do, and it's got quite a few different motivations. So that's the situation in France prior to this Napoleonic calling of a Sanhedrin. Now we have the actual declaration of the assembly here